Welcome to Office Hours, where we've been answering your media and tech-related production questions for more than 2,000 daily shows now. Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, is our reader today. Alexander, what have we got?
First question's coming in this morning from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. Is there an accepted standard for creators to place a screen bug that would avoid additional bugs added in distribution or broadcast?
I'm laughing at this because I've tried to do this, and you get on some channels and there's so many bugs you have no room. Courtney is going to address it. Courtney?
You need to call to exterminate all the bugs. There is no accepted standard universally. You have to check with whatever network or whatever broadcast media you're planning to distribute on, if they have a set of guidelines for broadcast bugs or for station identification bugs or whatever. Usually lower right corner is a pretty safe place because it's out of the way of closed captioning, or upper right corner, although depending upon sports broadcasts, a lot of times sports broadcasters like to put the permanent score and stats up there in their upper right-hand corner for down counter and yards to go, etc. So check with whoever is, if it's a sports broadcast or if it's a network, they will publish guidelines on where on-screen graphics can be placed, if they can be placed at all. Most of them like to receive a clean feed, so they can put the overlays and broadcast graphics on there without interference with whatever you have. Whatever you have may be covered up downstream, so just bear that in mind wherever you end up putting it.
Yeah, and just to emphasize on top of that, most big companies and organizations have standards manuals. Sometimes it's called the book or the graphics Bible that specifies where their logos must be placed if you're using them. So I can't tell you the number of times we had difficulties where if you're following the client's guidelines, you're totally in violation of the of where it's going to end up and their guidelines. So you end up with one logo on top of another and have to clean everything off and get to a clean feed. And if you've ever watched, like in an airport, the feeds from the major news organizations, Fox and CNN, stuff like that, they have so much graphics going on now. It's almost like there's a land rush, and we do not leave any pixel uncovered with some kind of promotional stuff. So it becomes very, very difficult to sort this all off. So thanks for the question, Vic, but it's a constant challenge. Communicate with everybody as much as you can, and hopefully there will be a little room for whatever you need to put up there. Next question.
Zach Stylesmith in Chautauqua, New York. I have a BirdDog Play hardwired on my network to show a program output from vMix, but it stops displaying after a few minutes. Happens on an AppleTV NDI viewer as well. What might cause this?
And Jason Bass is going to start us off here. Jason?
This could be a number of things, but by default, I would suggest make sure you don't have a green switch, and I would force I would force vMix's NDI output to be unicast, and that way it's not going to be throttled by a green switch.
Yeah, and by green switch, you mean any of the devices that are designed for eco-friendliness where they drop down in power consumption. Is that my general understanding?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Guy Cochran.
Yeah, I'd try a couple different things. I mean, first off, open up Studio Monitor on the local machine and see, is it a network thing? Can it play locally? And if it's playing out locally, then that tells you that it's working there. And then I would check in Task Manager, I would check what's actually happening with your GPU and your CPU if you're running an underpowered machine. I seem to recall from some of your previous questions that you have a machine that's on the border there of not being able to do much. You could try and turn down some things. If you Google just how to make machines so that they're not bloated, just try to slim it down as best you can, and maybe even limit the amount of NDI output so you can go into the output. It's called external, and just double check that you don't have any unnecessary, like another multi-view or something pushing out. And then if it is the network, there is a Windows update that just came out that broke a bunch of stuff because of RUDP. So you might want to go to the latest update or make sure an NDI access manager to change it to TCP. And those are some things to at least get the ball rolling and then come back and ask us some more questions. I like Jason's multicast or unicast example as well, but those are some of the things that I would start with.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Is this great for House of Worship needs? Free live stream hosting for up to 20 hours per month with 50 gigabytes CDN traffic.
And something about live push is what I see in the URL there. It's possible. I would worry only in this respect. I was taught really early in my career that if somebody's telling you there's something free and it's their business, there is some way they are monetizing things in most cases on the back end, which means that they may be scraping data from you, or they may be using you and selling your contact information to other suitable vendors. I mean, you run across very few business circumstances where somebody really does a free thing and it is legitimately free. It does happen, but to operate any kind of large enterprise, you need capital rolling through your system, or you can't pay for anything, including a stamp to put on an envelope. Does people still use stamps anymore? I don't even know if that's possible. Let's go to Jason Bache.
Yeah, I'm immediately skeptical of this. I'm looking through the site. CDNs are never free. That's like, the reason that VPNs cost money, and even then they will slow down your traffic. Just be very, very wary of this. There's no such thing as free in broadcasting, especially internet broadcasting, and there's definitely no free CDN.
Courtney Gooden, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was looking at some of the terms of the freebie version. They do a lot of paid versions here, but if you look at the left column here, for restreaming to platforms, if it's not live streaming, limitation 20 minutes, maximum runtime per event 20 minutes. That might be a limitation if you're doing a house of worship. It'll be a very short sermon. I've never known a person presenting a sermon to do it in less than do the whole service in less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, this is one of those things. This is the Costco model. They're giving you free samples in Costco, and it's not because they want to feed you. It's because they know that if you like the product, you'll end up purchasing it. So it's more a sampler to get a purchase.
Also, the video storage for pre-recorded live streaming is 200 megabytes. Now, you can't put a very long 200 megabytes is not
about 5 seconds.
Yeah, extreme.
So it'll give you a good look at the service and see if it fits you, and you may want to then get into a different tier product. But just free is a dangerous word in the marketing and advertising business. Next question.
From Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. Has Apple mitigated the lens glare issue with the introduction of the 17 Pro, and how, with the plethora of accessories available for iPhone, has no company made a simple matte box or simple French flag for the iPhone?
Jason Bache is going to start us off here. Jason?
I'll take the first half and leave the second half to Alexander. You mean the iPhone that doesn't come out until tomorrow? I'll tell you tomorrow. And if you mean lens flare, I think, and there's no such thing. The Hubble Space Telescope had lens flare. I mean, this is an unavoidable thing anytime you have optics. If you mean lens glare, the thing that Mac Rumors reported on yesterday, which are the blocky, software thing that they said they were going to fix immediately, ping me on Discord. I'll tell you tomorrow afternoon.
Alexander Knight.
I don't have any inside knowledge, but I think he is talking about lens flares. I'm going to post a link in the chat, and I recommend you watch the latest petapixel review of the 17 Pro and Pro Max. The title of the video is iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max Review for Photographers. They specifically address that, and they show before and after comparisons between the 16 Pro and the 17 Pro, and it is definitely greatly improved. In fact, there's also a lot of other areas where it is greatly improved, and they go into a lot of technical detail, practical real-world tests. They even did some tests with charts for the various camera lenses in that, so I would definitely recommend looking at that.
Yeah, I'll just make one more note. Famously, Steve Jobs, when he was alive, was very, very, very interested, for some reasons I don't know about, in glass. He became very interested in the subject, and all of the buildings that they make, there was a lot of money put into anything that was glass. I just think he was fascinated with it. One of the things that's done is created a lot of research into Apple's. They have things called nano texture glass that it was specifically very expensive products on some of the high-end monitors to allow light to hit the screen and not reflect directly back, but get refracted a little bit a little bit like a coating of some kind. And I think they put a lot of time and effort into that. Now, others have as well, but lens flares are often related to geometry. And also, the other thing I'll note is that phones are an everyday thing. I mean, these aren't cameras. We use them as cameras now, but in terms of a dedicated mount for matte boxes and things like that, I think you are always going to be in this realm of having to put some sort of structure around the camera, a cage or something, and then bolt on specific tools, a French flag if you want one, or something on a little arm that knocks out the incident source of light hitting the lens causing the reflection. I mean, those are common in regular cinematography. And so I think you can go there yourself, but I don't think they're going to do anything to make that even more, even a simpler process. You have to step up from using your phone out of your pocket as it's designed, or adding an ecosystem where you can make these light control tools available to yourself. Next question.
This one's coming from Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas. Am I the only one who has a persistent career fail of somehow becoming personally liable for keeping promises made or expectations set by vendors such as Oracle, Salesforce, and Microsoft?
Danny, it's a look at the fact that you were raised right. You take personal accountability things. I think it's a good thing. Jason, you want to comment?
Oh, Danny. Well, if it's a persistent thing, I'm all for extreme ownership, but I've never been held personally accountable for any expectations other than the ones that I set very carefully. If this has happened repeatedly for you, I think you need to hire a lawyer and get some better verbiage into your contracts, because that's really the way that this is going to go away.
Yeah, I'll just make another comment before Courtney, and it is this. I had to learn early how far to go. And there was time, I've seen people, particularly people on sets that I've been a part of, that they just got down into a weed and they would not let go of something that was so minuscule in terms of its effect on the end product that they were wasting time and effort and annoying the crew just to get something that really wasn't going to make a lot of difference. And when I was starting to learn my practice, I found myself doing a lot of things that I thought would be a good idea, but really was bogging down the whole process. So I had to learn what are my limits in this particular endeavor? Where do I stop pushing toward perfection and just let it be the best it can be? That was a wake up for me. Courtney, your thoughts?
Well, Danny, that's where boilerplate limits of liability clauses come in, and you can find them in almost every contract or every end-user license agreement that you sign. Just look in there and copy and paste, because almost all companies have this indemnity clause that says that they're not liable for anything that happens due to anybody else that touches that signal. There's indemnity clauses that you can find boilerplate for, that you can build into your contracts, that may limit the expectations if anybody reads those contracts, but they usually don't. So you may end up taking the liability for it and have to explain to the people that, hey, it's not your fault. Salesforce screwed up, or Oracle has shut down their servers in the middle of the show, or Microsoft decided to do a Windows 11 update right as your show started, and you had no ability to turn it off. So, hey, look at the indemnity clause in the contract,
Yeah. One last thing I'll mention is, often in your contracts with people, we've seen errors and omissions language, which says, if I don't do everything perfectly, at least my insurance company should back me up if it turns out that I was acting in good faith. So think about those kind of things. Next question.
This one's coming in from me in Port Coquitlam, BC. Thoughts on why we have yet to see an SDI version of the Blackmagic ATEM Mini Extreme ISO Gen 2. Predictions if they'll ever have a hybrid with SDI and HDMI.
Courtney Gooden, what do you think?
Well, where have you been for the last 8 years, Alexander? I have one right now. It's called the Blackmagic Television Studio HD. It has 8 inputs. It is a 3/4 of a 1 RU mounting, or you can set it alone on your desk. And if you look at the back of it, look here, it has 4 HDMI and or 4 SDI inputs for your first 4, and then 4 SDI inputs for the last 4. and it has multiple outputs, 4 outputs. It is not do ISO recording. So if that's what you're looking for, no, that doesn't exist yet. It has a built-in power supply and Ethernet connector and USB connector. So it's, and look, analog XLR inputs. Woo! What everybody's been asking for so many years. It's been out since 2017. So, if you need the flexibility to go either HDMI or SDI or a combination of both, that's handy. But you're going to have to come up with a way to record your program outputs out of one of those many outputs that are available on the Television Studio HD, and it's only 1080i. So, or 1080p. I think it'll do P now, but usually 1080i. So if you need to do 4K, it's not your person.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, the ATEM Extreme line's so much more powerful. That ancient relic that Courtney just showed is not even got scalers on all the channels. So the newer models have scalers, which that one was a nightmare because you'd have to conform all the devices to one standard, which was just a nightmare. So the newer stuff is really cool. As to thoughts as to what the model, why it doesn't have it. Aaron Parecki was able to pin down Dan May at one of the NAB interviews, and he actually asked the question in this video. And in the video, he talks about, well, we don't know if people want 2 ins or 3 or 4 or what that ratio is. And people in the chat are like, well, OC's done it with a $799 device that allows you to have SDI and HDMI. Of course, it doesn't have the cool Blackmagic ecosystem. But I think a lot of us are just waiting for this Extreme ISO Gen 2 to come out, because one of the cool things that nobody's really talking about is that it does have Thunderbolt in, so it has Thunderbolt in and out, so you could have this thing act as a Ultra Studio Mini. So there's just immense power in these new devices that are coming out, but for now, it's a decimator game or a converter game. So that's what he says in the video, just plop on some converters. But as some of us know, building those things into racks is not a lot of fun, especially if you're traveling with them and you're just making your rack into a nightmare of daisy-chained mess everywhere and having to power those things. There was some discussion in the chat Hasmuk had as to should he have 8 converters to convert 8 SDIs to make his HDMI version of the Extreme more useful. But yeah, it just depends on what you need and where you want to go, because it can get expensive quick if you want to go up into some of the other models that are even more powerful, like the 8K Constellation.
It's Alexander's question, and he's in the chat and has raised his hand. Alexander, do you want to?
Yeah, the ISO recording is a deal breaker. Like, I need that function. But then this is somewhat tangential, and this is directed to you, Guy. But if you were to, let's say, buy a bunch of these little HDMI to SDI converters, and you were going to build this into a rack, you were tasked with that. I know, though, they require some kind of USB-C power supply. How would you elegantly power all of those? Would you look at some kind of ginormous USB PD charger that had multiple ports and just run those cables? Or is there some kind of elegant way to power those things without having all these big brick supplies?
Yeah, Middle Atlantic makes a nice rack mount power supply that'll barrel off if you're running decimators. So you can, it's like $600, so it's not cheap. But it also has them for different amps as it goes out. The cheap way, which I recommended to Hasmuk, and I'll put a link in the chat to this device, is a $70 8-port. Since the Blackmagic ones are USB-C, you could just buy the ones without power supply. So you save $15 on each converter, and then you could run 8 off of one AC outlet. And that's what we do. We have these things where we took that really heavy-duty lock tape, Velcro that has the dual lock, and then we put all the converters going across that. So it's just one power supply to power 8 converters, which is pretty slick. But that one's only $69. And if you go the Middle Atlantic route, you're spending about $600.
I just checked the chat, and for some reason they're talking about pulled pork sandwiches. So I'm a little confused here, but I'm enjoying the chat. So if you haven't been in the chat, that's part of the Mukana experience, and you might want to do that. You can get there by going to officehours.global/join and following the breadcrumbs. Let's go to the next question.
I'm just going to grab a sandwich right now. Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia is asking, anyone have a new Apple device, iPhone, Apple Watch, or AirPods Pro 3?
Jason Beish.
Anyone that does, Tony, can't talk about it. So hit me up on Discord tomorrow afternoon, and maybe I'll have something to tell you.
There we go. Yeah, these products tend to have embargoes and things like that if someone is on a list where they can get a look at things early. So, and nobody with Apple wants to risk their status as a tester should they be in that category. And I don't know anybody who is. Well, I don't think I know anybody who is. So, tomorrow. Next question.
Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas asks, Ubiquity has a new mobile router industrial. What use does this have in production? With a link there.
We're going right back to Jason Beish. Jason?
Oh, cool. They're out. So they've been in pre-release for quite some time. And the thing that they really add is GPS that informs back to your central Ubiquity hub. So, if you put them in a van, for example, they will report their location on a map dynamically and in relatively good real time. They also have a pretty robust 4G antenna, and I've never really tried to use them actually as a router, but they make a great gateway.
Next question.
This is one of my questions. Courtney, I noticed that in my speed test via wired Ethernet connection on the MeLe PCs that they underperform. I suspect the NIC is software bound due to cost-cutting measures. What are your thoughts?
Courtney, you got a name check, so it's up to you.
Well, it depends on what the connection is. I haven't seen for the Ethernet ports, if they're the 1 gigabit Ethernet ports or if they're the 100 megabit Ethernet ports. Some of them were all
They claim to be 1 gig, but you get like 300, and so that's what to me gave it away. It's they're not hardware accelerated, or there's probably software based, but that's what I'm getting on my network.
Maybe
and
no
other
noticed
computer
that
has
with mine. I'm not running on one right now to do a speed test, but I'll take a look and see what the story is, because I do have gigabit Ethernet here, and when I do wired Ethernet speed tests from my Dell PC, I get 984 up and down. So, there's going to be some overhead, obviously, but 300 is quite a bit low. I have found that a lot of Samsung TVs with Ethernet connections are 10100s. They're not even anything. You won't even get above 100 megabits per second off of those. So if you're thinking of using Ethernet hooked up to your Samsung TV for streaming and using the internal streaming apps, which are always horrible inside the TVs, don't count on getting anything above 100 megabits.
Hopefully that helped you. Let's go to our next question.
Rajan Chandel in Los Angeles asks, recommendations for movable monitor arms for your desk.
And remember, we stay away from religious arguments in this show. Jason Beish is going to start us off with hardware mounting arms for desktops.
So the gold standard here, Rajan, is Ergotron. If you just look it up, ergotron.com, they are very expensive. I will admit that I bought them for my studio long before there were alternatives to them. And if you want something that's relatively inexpensive but will be a bit more of a pain to configure and just all over, not quite as nice, but also not $400, check out monoprice.com.
Yeah, and I'm going to add on a couple of things. I'm looking at all the arms that I have in front of me right now, and I must have 12 or 14 arms sticking out at me. And the thing that I noticed when I took a look at it is they're entirely dependent on what they're designed to support. When I started in this business, all monitors were CRT monitors, and they all weighed at least 5 to 10 pounds and often more. So everything I bought if I was going to mount something on an arm, it had to be incredibly robust. Now we live in the world where there's so much of these incredibly lightweight LED panels or LCD panels that are very useful, and they weigh almost nothing. So I find myself with a whole variety of different kinds of mounting arms and things, some of which are very small, some of which have those little micro clamps smaller than a Mayfair clamp, and a very thin friction arm, and a bracket that holds up one of these 15-inch diagonal LED models, and it works fine. And they don't move, and they stay there, and they're great. I'm not moving around, and I don't think I would do this if I wasn't in a fixed situation with a heavy desktop that is not going to move or shake. But then we got things like this arm. This is off of a pole mount thing, and you can see this is something that Newer had that I was looking at for my NAB rig, and I liked it so much that I just clamped the pole on the side of my desk here, and now I have 3 or 4 things on various arms at various adjustable heights. I would never have had the option of this earlier in my career. So I just think there's been a lot of change in the load characteristics of things people want to mount on their desks and the devices. Now there's just all sorts of stuff sold for doing this. So my thoughts have changed on that. Courtney, you want to get in on this?
Yeah, it took me a while to find it because I just bought one. Here's what I got is this Juano. Yes, it's Juanuo.
$35. Amazing.
$35. It's very sturdy. It is steel. And the nice thing about this is it has this vertical post that you can, you do have to use, it's not grab it and position it, but you do have a hex adjustment there so that you can adjust that height up or down of the whole arm. And then, of course, the arm goes up and down on the top piece here. And the bottom piece, which doesn't change height, but it does swing left and right. So you have a good amount of adjustment on this thing, and it can handle up to about 20 pounds, which is a lot for an LCD monitor. And I found it to be, and I found the mounting plate to be very sturdy, and the base plate and the screw underneath to be good, that won't actually punch a hole in your table that may be made out of pressboard or old cardboard boxes or something that they make cheap tables out of, or polyethylene. And you can also mount it 2 ways, either with the screw-on clamp, or you can drill a hole through the table and put a wing nut on it and actually mount it through the surface of the table, which I would suggest if you're going to put anything heavy on it. It does have cable management as well.
And there's a lot of chat on the chat about it today. Jack Cannon says, I use budget products from Amazon called Mount It. They are fine. Mickey mounts are noted by David Brady by Yellow Tech, and he's got a link to that. Juano is mentioned by Vic Hernandez. And so there's just, I think that we've never had more various products all available very quickly, presuming that they didn't come from offshore and they're tied up in tariff or something like that. We should be able to get a ton of stuff. So, Raj, good luck. Next question.
This question's coming in from Andy Kokendorf from Viera, Florida, USA. Which small portable mixer with auto mix would you recommend for a Zoom meeting ballroom support kit? Audience will be less than 100 in the venue. Thanks.
Alexander Knight's going to help you out here. Alexander?
Yeah, it would be nice if you specified how many inputs you're needing and how many outputs. I/O is important because when you say small portable, that's very vague. I mean, how do you define small? Like, some people may define a 12-channel or an 18-channel mixer small, or a 24-channel rack mount mixer small. So it really depends what you're talking about. For starters, on the lesser expensive side of things, the newer Allen & Heath CQ series, the CQ12T, is a really affordable digital mixer that sounds fantastic. It has, they're not calling it Dugan Auto Mix because it's not licensed, but they do have some version of an auto mix. I believe it gives you 8 channels. So that's one thing to also keep in mind. A lot of these more affordable digital mixers, you're only going to get 8 channels of auto mix. So if you're doing a bigger panel discussion, for example, and you need more than 8 channels, you're going to have to spend quite a bit more money on a mixer to get something of that capability. So just keep that in mind. But the CQ12T is a pretty good start. Also, the Behringer XR18 will give you 8 channels of auto mix as well. There are things I don't like about that mixer. I think the Allen & Heath preamps are much better. The analog to digital circuitry, everything is better on the Allen & Heath. It's also a newer product. To be fair to Behringer, the XR series is pretty old now. So there you go.
Just as Alexander suggested, I was checking the chat, and sure enough, Mickey weighed in with, it's waiting for the Mickey McAchore answer. It depends. And so I think you're going to have to be a little more specific about what you're looking for. Next question.
Yeah, Rajan Shandil in Los Angeles asks, Harshid, any thoughts on the iOS 26 accessibility features? Hearing rumbles online.
Harshid, what do you hear?
I have not kept up with the newest accessibility tools for sakes, but thing is with any accessibility features, it just depends on the person's disability. So specifically, VoiceOver has always had newer features. I would always say go to apple.com and look up accessibility for what new specifics that come out. That they do a great job of letting you know what features are rounded out within the new either iOS or product line.
There you go. Next question.
Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas. Compact camera pedestals are useful for positioning a remote camera such as the Obsbot Tail 2 inside a live audience. iFootage is promoting a device some mock as a mic stand. Thoughts, with a link to iFootagegear.com.
Yeah, I actually saw that, and I thought it was interesting. It has a big round base like the old Atlas stands that looks like it's very heavy, and then a single pole coming up out of the center. So it does look very much like an old mic stand. But Jason Bass, have you heard anybody weigh in on this?
Well, no, I just looked at the website myself, and okay, I would never put an Obsbot in a crowd because somebody's going to walk into it, somebody's going to kick it. I wouldn't do that with a tripod. It feels like a bad idea unless you could anchor it to the seat, with something solid and not on the floor. The other thing that I would bring up here about these is that I'm seeing a maximum load for their largest, heaviest thing of 10 kilograms. So, yeah, the Obsbot, of course, is going to be less than that, but no real camera should really go on there.
Courtney Gooden?
Yeah, I agree with Jason. That was what I was going to mention, that the small base and a tall single mono stand, the laws of physics say if there's any weight at all on the top of that, it could get knocked over really easily. And since it's on a tall stand, especially if you want to get up above people's heads, that's a lot of angular momentum when that camera hits the ground. So bear that in mind. Somebody's gonna bump into it or trip over the cable, which is gonna yank the base out from underneath the top, and then it's gonna fall over. A tripod is a much more stable platform because it has to go really far to get its center of gravity over the point of support, which would cause it to tip over and hit the ground. So tripod is a much better option than a monopod, especially if you're going to put anything out in an audience where people,
You've caused me to think back in my career. One of my investments many years ago was a thing called a spider pod, which was a foldable thing. I was doing a lot of remote shooting. I wanted to get above crowd. It was a big, heavy steel thing that had 3 legs that came out in kind of a I don't know what the shape would be, a little star shape, so the legs would fold out. Then it had a platform you could stand on, and it was great because I was always in the back of the room on this rig. But the funny thing was, when I had been using a box, literally a wooden box really early in my career, to do that, people would always sit on it and shake the camera. And I thought, oh, good, this is going to solve everything. Well, sure enough, there was never a show where somebody didn't either bump into it or put a drink on it in a stupid manner and cause a shake in the shot. This is just one of the tough things you do. So I'm going to support what Jason said. Think long and hard about how the audience and or the traffic around you might impact your shots. And if you can find a way to get your camera decoupled from everything around it, that is the best of all worlds whenever you can do it. Next question.
This question is coming in from Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota, USA. What are the programs and shows related to office hours where one could get exercise with vMix?
Jason Bass, are you going to mount a show called Exercising vMix with Jason Bass? That'd be fun.
Don't we already have 2 of those? We have extra hours on Monday and then Thursday, and I believe one on Wednesday now. So you don't have to go outside of the office hours universe in order to get practice, and we are always up for training. So I would say start right here.
Yeah, that is one of the things we do. We have shows on various platforms, particularly for this reason. People who want to investigate. We've got VizVector doing shows. We've got vMix doing shows. We've got Oliver Breidenbach's Mimo Live doing shows. So that's part of the back end of this show is investigating all this technology and actually using it so we know what works. Guy Cochran, you wanted to dive in?
Yeah, one of the fun things that you could do is there's that mock-up Zoom meeting that we use for Mimo Live testing, but it's also accessible in other apps like vMix. So if you want to cut a mock show, this thing's running 24/7, and with vMix 26 and higher, as long as you install the Zoom plugin, you can input these people. Well, they're not real people, they're just AI generated, but you could join this meeting and you just find it in Google just by going to Google and typing in office hours global Zoom test, join that meeting with your vMix instance, and then input all your people. The one thing which I need to make a tutorial for this is just how to use the 8-up or 7-up or 6-up virtual camera input. So you can use these side-by-side views that are already built in there. So there's some templates. So I understand when you want to get some exercise, but first you need to know how to do it. But maybe I'll make a tutorial. There's some out there though. If you look just on YouTube for some of the past episodes of the vMix Fun Time show, they show Zoom input, and then they show how to do these 2-up with virtual inputs. So hopefully that gets you started.
Next question.
This one is one of my questions. What's the holdup with the refresh on the Mac Pro? Do you think Apple is rethinking what they're going to do with the design, or is it all processor related?
This is a pure guess on my part, but with the studios having so much, those Studio Pros have so much power and capability in them, I'm wondering, and this is purely a guess on my part, if they see the future as not the old big cabinet with cards in it future, but things hung on the outside with these incredibly fast buses and things like Sonnet boxes and things like that for your cards. I don't know that much about hardware. Jason Bates does. So, Jason, what do you think?
This feels like a perfect excuse to bring up the 90-90 principle. What 90% of people need 90% of the time can be solved by a Mac Studio. And the Mac Mini Studio. For those who need internal cards and an insane amount of throughput, I'm guessing that they're dealing with very, very tight tolerances and processors that take a very long time to iterate. But also, and more importantly, if you need a $20,000 computer, the current Studio is pretty great.
In the chat, Guy Cochran said go to input, select virtual set. I'm sorry, I was looking at something else. I thought Vic Hernandez, that's the one I was looking for. From your mouth to Tim Apple's ears. So there is a group up at that high end of computing who probably is looking for a machine exactly like you described, Alexander, but maybe not so many of them that Apple is pushing in that direction right now. Although I don't know what's in the lab there. Next question.
Rajan Shandell in Los Angeles. AI photo booths seem to be a hit at every event I am attending. Something similar to snapbar.com. Thoughts?
Courtney Gooden?
Well, I don't know why you would need to do this in a photo booth, because everybody has a phone these days. Everybody can download the Gemini app and can take a picture of themselves and put themselves into any situation that they like, and then send it to anybody on social media. So why do a photo booth? I think more of a popularity these days is the old-fashioned vintage photo booth. We're seeing a big resurgence in these at events because the old photo, there's something about the nostalgia of the old photo booth that is chemically based. You go in, you close the little curtain, it does 4 snaps, and about a minute and a half later, it outputs a little strip of 4 photos that are processed on the spot. This technology goes back to the 1880s. So, it's progressed a little bit, but it's all on-site processing. And the fact that you end up with a personalized item that there's no duplicates of, and when you hand it to somebody, it means something rather than just a snap taken on your phone that has some AI wizardry applied to it. So I think people really get into the nostalgia of the photo booth because of the technology, the old technology, the vintage technology, and the fact that what it delivers really can't be duplicated and is more of a treasure to keep than something that's going to disappear and next time you format your phone's hard drive.
Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, is asking, House of Worship is building a new building. Sermon will broadcast plays of skits. Recommended cameras, very budget, frugal community.
Jason's going to start you off here. Jason?
I'm going to start with it depends. And turn your question around. If they are building a new building, now is the time to say either you're going to take this seriously or you're just kind of tolerating me and my video proclivities. This is the perfect time to say, we need infrastructure, we need Ethernet in the walls, we need to be able to, do things that if you want this to be part of the future of the congregation, we need to plan for it. So I would not say, oh, it's only going to cost the tiniest little bit of money. I would say if this matters to you, then let's sit down and do it for real.
I 100% agree with that. While I was doing some new construction on the property that we had before this, I spent a significant amount of time just figuring out what do I need to lay in terms of wires or conduit between spaces so that in the future, if I want to wire things up, I'm not having to do everything externally. I think it was a wise thing to think about. Next question.
This one's coming in from Pedro G. Gonzalez. The third in Nashville, Tennessee. Are there 4K video encoders that can output 4K 60 that cost less than 3K? Should I spend more?
Guy Cochran's going to help you out with this one.
Yeah, the one that I've owned and done a lot with is, that's the outside world that I was going to show for Tony's question, but there was a dew on the window, so I couldn't show him the outside world with the PTZ camera. Let me cut over to the input 5. So this is that one, which is the encoder that I believe we're encoding on this show right now. It's the Osprey Talon. It's $2,689. It does 4K 60. It has some pretty beefy chips inside of it that allow it to actually be the OEM model that they use for Amazon's encoders. If you're going to buy one of those and go up to their AWS infrastructure, that is the same exact hardware box, just rebranded. So I would take a look at that. Just buy it from somebody like B&H where you can return it if it doesn't work out for you. But I would give that a shot. I know some of the guys were having issues with it doing HDR. As long as you're not trying to do HDR and trying to do some funky stuff with YouTube, I think you'll have great success. And then just don't crank up the megabits too high. YouTube has a throttle as to how, I think they were trying to push like over 50 megabit, and there's somewhere in there you're going to get into the danger zone. So as you start to play with this, just be aware that there is a spot. I just don't know where that theoretical limit is as to how high you can push that data.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I'll kind of pose this question at Guy, who's more of a streaming expert here than anybody else here on the panel right at the moment. But how about the Ultra HD, from Blackmagic? It's $700 and some odd dollars, $750, $745. Supposedly does 4K.
I've just seen too many people have fails with those with the cache full. So I can't vouch for that one. I have the HD version one sitting over here. I don't own the 4K version, but just based on experience, I run one of these forums on Facebook that has 60,000 users, and the amount of times that I've seen somebody go down with that device made me just shy away from it.
So it has heat reliability problems, or do you think it's just some other?
No, I think it's their internet and the way that it handles the buffering. I don't think that it has a big enough cache or something like that. I'm not sure why it just doesn't allow it to spray out and then just drop some frames rather than filling up the cache and then stopping the stream, which, I'd rather see video and see something coming out that's chunky and try to troubleshoot that than just have nothing, just have the thing stop and all your audience members, especially if you lose the stream and it's one of those keys where you can't start it back up. So I just, once bitten, twice shy. It's one of those things.
Walking on eggshells.
I would not try to save money in that arena. Yeah, there's other devices too. There's a Teradek Prism. There's some other ones out there too that are way more robust. They're more than the $3,000 that he wants to spend.
Jason, you want to get in on this?
Yeah, I second what Guy said. Back in the day, these were called. Back in my day, we called these web presenters, and the 720p version worked unbelievably cleanly. It was so flawless, and it would do, I believe, was it 4K through if you put it through SDI. SDI was incredible. The 1080 version just got weird. Like it just, I don't know how else to put it. It just got weird. And I've had many a live broadcast be interrupted with verbose swearing because of the web presenter. Now I believe it's called something encoder. But yeah, same deal.
We are here to serve you, and those are the questions we had in the queue for today, which means that we are pretty much out of show here. I wanted to mention tonight is Thursday, which means the Rundown with David Paskin is on in the evening, 6 p.m. David hosts a panel that takes a deep dive into why. It's so much fun. In fact, I'm going to see if I'm going to have the time to slip into the show tonight, because I always enjoy talking to those people whenever I go over there. As to our normal stuff, thank you so much to everyone who's involved in making this show happen every day. To the three constituencies we have, the first and foremost being you, the viewers. We consider you our producers because you do produce the show. When you ask these questions and particularly vote on the questions, we know what you are most interested in hearing about. So if you participate in that system on the back end, thank you so much. And for the rest of you, that officehours.global/join thing will get you into that system should you want to participate in the future. To the panelists, unbelievable group of people. Again today, as always, I consider many of you my friends, and I don't know what I would do without this community. I learn so much every day just sitting here listening to you make me smarter. So thank you very, very much, panelists. And there is a small but unbelievable army in the background doing all the tech work that makes the show go around. Not just the tech work. There's a lot of people who are volunteers for office hours who work in the back end quietly, organizing the shows, putting out memos, just keeping the community together and making everything happen. So to the back end crew on all of the various hats you wear, thank you so much for what you do here. Last thing I'm going to do, of course, is the Talak Traversal. If you had gotten these questions stuck in your mind and you had to go find experts to answer them, and you didn't have office hours, you would travel 23,000 miles today, 37,000 kilometers. That is 184 million bananas for scale. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you right back here tomorrow morning, as always. Have a great day.
Sure was mentioned yesterday, but we Preto, we miss you, buddy.
Oh, God, yes. They did a nice tribute yesterday.
Yeah, I saw the tribute online. It was very nice.
He was one in a million. Such a great
To his last day, he was trying to get me to move to Vegas.
And our heart goes out to his family, Anthony, and his all the people around him.
All the other Pretos.
Yeah, there's a big clan. Some of whom
to the plethora of Pretos.
San Diego.
We're with
That's
you.
why I knew Anthony.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.